Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Songwriting Simplified with me, Jonny Lipsham, right here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk here in Scotland, the capital of everything, for all time and forever. I hope everybody is doing well and has had a good week so far. It's been a very, very busy couple of days for me, for sure. Most notably because we have, at Presonus, we have pushed out a bunch of new things. Not least among them is a maintenance release for Studio One 6.5. So we've got Studio One 6.5.1, which includes, I think, 2 or 3 improvements and a whole bunch of things that were problematic that are now fixed, including something to do with vertical snapping. When you're dragging an event from one track to another, it didn't snap to grid particularly well, but now it does. That is fixed. And the other really, really big one was to do with Dolby Atmos and using the binaural mix of the Rhythm of the Night demo song. And basically, because that has a very high track count, if you're using a Studio Live mixer in DAW mode, it freaks out the mixer. The mixer basically runs out of memory. And when that happens, Studio One and the mixer stop talking to each other. Studio One kind of locks up, the mixer locks up, and it's not good. But that is now fixed. And there will be, I believe, if it's not out already, I think it probably is. I think there is a maintenance release for the Studio Live Series 3 mixers firmware that fixes the memory side of the issue for the mixers. So if you've got a Studio Live mixer, that is now all sorted out. So you can go ahead and load up the Rhythm of the Night binaural mix for that demo song, and the mixer in DAW mode should behave as you'd expect it to, and there should be no locking up anymore. Staying with Studio Live Series 3, we have just released something very, very special that has been in kind of public beta for quite a while, and that is something that we have called Metro. What is Metro? Well, Metro basically enables you to control a Studio Live Series 3 mixer remotely. So for example, and this is kind of what I've been doing in testing, is controlling the mixer for my local church that I attend on Sundays, and doing the mix of the Sunday morning service, but from here. And I can listen to the audio in real time with pretty much no latency. And I can basically control that mixer, and it's awesome. It works really, really well. So that is something else that is also out and is available with an update to Universal Control and also to the firmware for the Series 3 mixer. So there you go. DAW mode is fantastic, and of course Metro kind of makes the entire mixer experience kind of very, very special. So it's now possible to control somebody else's Series 3 mixer over the internet and listen to their mix in real time through your interface and your speakers. Works really great. So that is something that is very, very new, and there have been a couple of videos that have been posted on that today, which are very, very well worth checking out. They're not very long, they're only a couple of minutes each. So those are worth watching. But there's not really a whole lot in the new maintenance release for Studio One for songwriters. There just isn't. But it's only a maintenance release, so we're going to have to wait until the next major release for anything kind of in terms of new features and that kind of thing. But there we go. So Metro is probably one of the biggest things that we've pushed out in recent years, especially for the Studio Live Series 3 mixers since DAW mode. So there we go. That is kind of the news Presonus. So yeah, I hope you found that kind of helpful and useful. All right, so sorry, let's go see who's here. And actually, for once, it was not Billy Morgan who was first in the door. It was actually Bobby Booth. Bobby Booth was first in the door. Well done, Bobby. And we also got Ron Figura here as well. And we have... Who else do we have? We got Paul Morgan. We got Stephen Wilson. We've got Just Bob. We got Tony Cardona. And the aforementioned Billy is here. Carl Trajuziak is here. Don Oliver. Boris Dancy is here. Dwayne is also here. And we've got Semog Eng is here as well. Which is great. So, we do actually have a really good question, which is perfect for Songwriting Simplified, and that comes from Ron Figura. So I'm going to read his question. He says, best things to know about duplicating a horn section with plugins, either premium plugins and or stock Studio One plugins to achieve the most realistic sound. Now, you've used the word duplicating, which kind of threw me a wee bit because I'm not quite sure what you mean by duplicating. Do you mean kind of blending real horn section sounds of actual saxophones, trumpets, trombones, and that kind of thing with, virtual instruments? Is that what you're referring to? Or are you talking strictly about virtual instruments and kind of building a horn section? Because if you're talking about using virtual instruments to build a horn section, you can certainly use what comes with presence, actually. There's some really good examples. And in fact, if you listen to my little theme tune, it is just trumpet and saxophone. But what you get is a nice blend between the two instruments. And of course, there are other examples of how to build a horn section that I could go through as well. I wrote a song a long time ago called Softly Spoken, which basically uses pretty much all of the brass section sounds from presence, including French horns and trumpets and trombones and a few brass instruments like that, as well as a tuba, which I guess I could try and find in Studio One. Been a while since I've had that song open, so we'll see if it actually opens or not. Here we go. Softly Spoken. I'm going to open this guy. Hello. Sample rate mismatch. Sorry about that. The audio cut because the song I just loaded up was in 44.1, and yeah, that killed everything. Sorry about that. We should be back now because I have corrected that issue. So I'm just going to save the song so that if I open it again in the future, it will open up at the correct sample rate. Sorry about that. Yeah, I know you lost my voice. Yes, I realized what happened there. Old song. I forgot. I totally forgot for some reason. I don't know why. Totally forgot that I had switched everything over in my studio to 48K for Dolby Atmos, because Dolby Atmos uses 48K and I didn't want to keep on switching between the two. So I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to set everything up to 48K. Unfortunately, that means when I open up an old song that is in 44.1 with all of my sound settings set to 48K, it kills everything. Because basically Windows Audio is set to 48K, Universal Control is set to 48K, Studio One is set to 48K, OBS is also set to 48K, so everything is set to 48K so that I never get any sample rate mismatches until I open an old song. So let that be a lesson to you folks. If you open an old song that is not at the same sample rate as anything else, it will cut your audio. Basically because your interface will go, what? What? and not know what to do. So the secret is, if that happens for you, I'm going to show you this so that you don't kind of have like a nervous breakdown or something like that. Let me get that down. There we go. Because I don't want this to happen for you. So I'm going to show you what to do if you have a problem where you open up an older song that is at a different sample rate. Or somebody sends you a Studio One song that is at a different sample rate than your setup is. So in this case, this was set to 44.1. You guys lost all my sound. And it took me a little moment to figure that out. But if you see at the bottom here, we have the sample rate here in the transport bar. If you click on that, this opens up the song setup. And then you just change the sample rate to the correct sample rate and hit apply and hit OK. And then you'll be good to go. So it's important that you do that. And that should be checked. I don't know why that's not checked, but anyway, it is now. All right, so everything is now set correctly. So now you should be able to hear everything. So this is my song called Softly Spoken. It's an instrumental tune. It's basically brass band and rhythm section, fundamentally. But there is, I am addressing Ron's question here about horn section things. So this is kind of a wee bit bigger than a horn section, but it kind of gives you the same idea. So I'm going to play just a wee bit of this. All right, so let's solo up just the brass band so you can hear kind of without the distraction of that guitar, which was for some reason way louder than it used to be. In fact, this was recorded originally with Studio One 3.5. I think that's how old this song is, so we have since done lots of updates to the plugins, so things like EQ and compression, the output gains were changed, so everything's a little bit wonky. So let's just listen to just the brass. And I'm going to take the melody out of this so you can just hear the French horns, the trombones, and the tuba. All right, so this is like quite an old kind of tune. I actually wrote this originally. This is meant to be just a mock-up for a brass band that I had worked with when I was a teenager. And I had written a few arrangements for them when I was a teenager. And I'd always had this idea of putting my rhythm section with the brass band and to see what we would come up with. And so this was a mock-up for that. So this, as I say, this was a mock-up for that that particular thing. And I wrote, having kind of recorded everything in Studio One, I then wrote out all the charts and I sent them off to the other part of, way the other side of the UK. And I sent them a mix of this so they could hear how it should sound. And I gave them a backing track that was just the rhythm section so they could work with just the rhythm section. And then about 6 months later, we put the whole thing together. We put my rhythm section with their brass band, and it sounded fantastic. It worked out really well. So what have I done here? Well, we've got we've got trumpets. Now, this sound here for the trumpets, all of these are all rendered out to audio. But if I was to turn off the solo for a second and just solo up just the trumpet, this is like 3 trumpets. So you get that kind of nice little bit of ever so slight phasing and chorusing that you get when you have more than one trumpet player, and the intonation varies just a little bit. Now, there is a sample inside of Presence that gives you exactly this sound. So go and look at the brass folder inside of Presence. You'll see that there's something called Trumpet Section. Use that sound because that is a section of 3 trumpets, a sampled section sound of 3 trumpets, and they are playing the same notes in unison. So if, for example, you have something where you want to have a realistic sound, and there's a lot of brass and horn section sounds that aren't actually that good. So the way to get around this is use that particular section sound, and then there are others for woodwinds, like there's saxophones. You can layer up a few different saxophones as well, and they'll all be ever so slightly out of phase with each other a little bit, and that's what you want. Plus also, if there is a vibrato articulation for those sounds, use them. Make sure you use those vibrato articulations, and here's the reason why. It adds a little bit of extra realism to the sound. And you'll hear this on my 2016 EP, where I did actually, Belonging to Tomorrow is that record. And I did blend real horns played by real people with Presence XT as well. And so the way I needed that to work so that you would not tell the difference between the two was I needed to use section sounds, like I was just describing, and using the vibrato articulation as well. Because the combination of the real person and their vibrato with the vibrato of the sampled sound, put those together and it actually created a nice piece of realism. And then you can do the same with saxophones actually. Even if you've got the two playing exactly the same notes, real people and the virtual instruments playing the same notes, you'll get a nice, big, well-rounded sound. Plus, you've got that kind of thing where, the virtual instruments are really, really clean because they are very, very clean recorded samples. And then even if you don't quite have the cleanest recordings of the real instruments, maybe not in a necessarily well-treated room, it's fine. You just blend it in with the virtual instrument and you can still get a good horn section sound. And then the rest is all in the voicing, which is what I have here. Everything is all about the voicings. So make sure that if you're going to be writing in different parts, so you've got 4 or 5 part harmony going on in your horn section, make sure you have a contrast between close voicing. What's close voicing? That's close voicing versus wide voicing. That's wide voicing. Spaced voicing is another term for that. So try and get that combination between nice closed, you know, like that for a major seventh. I mean, that's the John Williams French horn sound in Indiana Jones, right? Whoops. That's his favorite thing, major sevenths in fourth inversion. Right? So how does he achieve that? Well, you've got the two French horns at the bottom that are very, very close, they're semitones apart. Which on its own sounds ugly, but when you put the major third above that, okay, and then put the fifth on the top, and then you can double the octave on top of that. And there you've got the famous John Williams French horn sound. And then, so what you would do with that particular sound is you can double the octave, this note here, with second and third trumpets. And then, you know, when you're getting towards the end of your piece, bring in your lead trumpet to play the octave above that as well. And then, of course, you could have, you know, the trumpets playing a more open sounding voicing of that major seventh like this, combined with your French horns. Whoops. Doubling that octave there. And so you combine with those things in combination, you can get like a nice, strong, powerful kind of sound, which is what you get with John Williams. And then again, you know, you can double those French horns with trombones as well, just to give them a little bit of extra weight, especially, you know, you can have trombones going. And that will add a little bit of extra girth, and then, you know, your tubas and euphoniums down here, or, you know, whatever you want to do. But that's the best way to kind of blend real and virtual instruments together. Decide which ones are going to be the real ones, which ones are going to be virtual instruments, or maybe you are in a position where you can't decide. The decision is made for you by the quality of the recordings of the real people, the real instruments. I've done this before where I've ended up, you know, I've recorded an alto sax solo, and I've ended up having to replace it with a virtual saxophone because the recording of the alto sax wasn't really that great. It didn't really cut very well. So I ended up replacing that with a virtual saxophone, and I basically just doubled exactly what the real sax player played. And I did that on Presence, and it worked beautifully. And you would never really know unless, you know, you're good at spotting a virtual saxophone by ear. If you are, then yeah, you've got that. All right, so that's a really, really good question. Could you pull up a new song and demonstrate how to set up, record, and use vibrato? Are you talking about the virtual sound that I'm talking about here? Yeah, I can pull up a new song. So let's go over here. Go recent files. Let's close that. Let's go new, and we're going to go record a mix. We're going to set that to bars again, and this should not be 31.5 minutes. We want that just to be 5 minutes. That's fine. 48K, and we'll go new song. All right, let's go to Presence, and what we'll do here is we'll go to the brass instruments. No, that's bass. Next one down. So we have here trumpet, and these are all basically single instrument trumpet, right? So if I was to go trumpet full, if you look at the articulations here, I need to have this record enabled, and I don't. There we go. No vibrato. Okay, doesn't sound that good. But if you put the vibrato on, now you got something that sounds a little bit more real. So, for example, if I was to, let's just call this trumpet. Like that, and let's stick our metronome on with our pre-count, and I'll just record something in. And some of that was a little bit loose, so we're going to tighten that all up. So we're going to go Control A to select. New. Set. Control A. Thank you. And all of those were 16th notes, so let's shuffle those up. And my first note didn't play because I played it too soon. But that's fine. I can just draw it back in. All right, so I'm happy with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double this up. I'm going to bring in a new presence. And this time I'm going to go down to the classic orchestra. And I'm going to go to brass. Now, you need to have the Persona Symphonic Orchestra for this to work for you. And I want trumpet section. And I want to use sustain or legato. It doesn't really matter too terribly much why you. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take this and I'm going to close that for now. And I'm going to drag that down. All right, so we've got more trumpets here. So T, T, section. There we go. All right, so let's continue to build out our horn section. And we will go to woodwinds. And we will go for a bit of an alto sax. And we'll go alto sax full. Again, I keep forgetting to flip in. Do this. Again, doesn't sound that great. Sounds like a car horn. We want some vibrato. All right, so we definitely want some of that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to alt drag this down, but I'm going to pitch this a little bit differently so we get a little bit of harmony. All right, so for this, I'm going to right click this and I'm going to go transpose. And this starts on an F. So let's say we start this on a B flat. So we'll go F sharp, G, G sharp, A, B flat. And then what we can do is we're going to bring in another one. And this time we will bring in a bit of tenor saxophone. All right. And again, we want the vibrato sound. And I want to arm that one to record. And this time I'm going to grab this again and I'm going to pitch this one a different way. So I'm going to alt drag this one onto here. I'm going to right click this one, and this one starts on F, but I'm going to pitch this one down. Let's see, where shall I have this one start? So I definitely want to go down. I don't want to go up. I want to go down a little bit. So, because at the moment, this is what we've got. Which sounds pretty good, but I want to kind of thicken out the harmony a wee bit. So, let's try this. That sounds pretty good to me. And there you have it. You have a horn section just like that. That's too busy. That's too busy as well. Yeah, I think I'll use this. Yeah, we'll use that. And we'll duplicate that. like that. You guys are getting sick of that horn line, probably. All right, let's double click this. Again, with that first note. Because I hit it too soon, that's probably what it was. Ooh, I messed up the end there. Oops. Okay, what happened there? Ah. Anyway, that's totally messed up. There we go. All right, so that just gives you a little mock-up of what you can do with virtual instruments. Now, if I was to blend these together with real actual people as well, then you would end up with something that sounds pretty good, I think. And this is just something I mocked up in just a few minutes. You know, you can make this sound obviously a lot more realistic, as demonstrated in this song over here. If I was to turn that off, turn that on. All right, so yeah, that's just the brass band part there. But that gives you an idea of just some of the things you can do. Now, obviously, it's not going to be as good as the real thing. And also, the other thing to remember is there are third-party sound libraries out there that are a lot more expensive, and therefore they have a lot more articulations, and they have been recorded with multiple microphones and all of that. So what you're hearing is basically, you know, the stock sounds in Presence XT and what you can do with them. You can make them sound fairly realistic. They're not going to be as good as the real thing, never going to be as good as the real thing. And, you know, they're never going to compete with, you know, a third-party sound library that's been recorded with multiple microphones and with multiple layered samples and all of that, you know, where each sound, each note and articulation has been captured multiple times over at multiple different velocity levels and so on and so forth. You know, the more microphones and the more times you capture a sound and the more velocities and the more different articulations you have, the better you're going to have. There are some articulations and sound variations that are available in Presence XT, but, you know, make use of those. Make use of the right kind of sound variations, and you'll get something that sounds pretty decent. Is the answer there. Neil says, sorry, but I don't think those sound. I don't think those sounds don't sound any more realistic than Korg M1 horns. I kind of disagree with you. I'm not saying they're perfect, and I'm not saying they're wonderful, great, and they are the best horn sounds in the entire world. Not going to say that, because that's not true. I do think, having played Korg M1s, I do think they are better than the Korg M1 sounds, but they're not, they're not up there with, a sound library that's going to cost you, $700, $800, $900,000. Not in the same league. Not going to be, because they're not designed to be. These are stock sounds that come free with your DAW, with Studio One. They're not, so they're not going to be expensive because of that. Unless you want Studio One to start being a $900,000, $2,000 DAW, then there's where things get compromised. So, let's see. Any recommendations for a reasonably priced library? There are some good libraries out there. Rich Cresswell was talking to me the other day about a big band library that he showed me, and I've forgotten who makes that. So Rich, if you're here, please do add that in to the chat, because that was brilliant. I thought that was really, really good and very, very usable for, doing horn section mock-ups and that kind of thing. Well worth using. There's also the Chris Hine horns, which has actually a really good reputation. And I used to have those back in my Cubase days many years ago, and so they are probably a lot better now than they were then. But yeah, third-party sound libraries will do the same job. However, and you are going to get a little bit more realism out of a third-party sound library because, they've got a bigger budget and they've spent more money on capturing those sounds. Which you don't get with stock sounds. You're just not going to get that with stock sounds, just like ever. It is just what it is. But yes, you can certainly, it's all in how you think about virtual instruments. If you treat a virtual instrument like it's a real person, actually with a real instrument, putting real air into the instrument, and you treat it that way, and you voice realistically for the instruments, then you will get something that sounds good. So you got to remember that if you're talking about a horn section, you're talking about real players that are blowing real air into instruments. Therefore, they need to breathe. Therefore, you can't have like impossibly long lines, or you can't have impossibly long notes either, because not everybody can circular breathe. So those are things to bear in mind. But that was a great question. I'm going to go up and see what I've missed, if I've missed anything. Bobby's asking, what's the difference between brass and woodwind? Good question. This is a flugelhorn. I'm going to go over to the other screen. This is a flugelhorn. This is a brass instrument. It has a mouthpiece that you blow into here, and it is made of brass. Okay, and basically you make a sound when you blow into this, and that's how the notes are produced. Okay. Thing I like about the flugelhorn is it's because it's a bit wider here, and it's got a bit of a bigger flare here, and the tubing is a little bit wider open. You get a nice kind of warmer, more mellow sound than you would with a trumpet. And that's kind of my preferred sound. So the difference between a woodwind instrument and a brass instrument is two things, because even as, things like saxophones tend to have a brass lacquer on them. So you'd be forgiven for thinking that a saxophone is a brass instrument. It's not. It's a woodwind instrument. Why? Because of two things. Number one, all the keys on it. This has got valves. Trombones have slides, or some of them have valves as well. But also a saxophone has a mouthpiece that has a reed, and you blow the air over the reed and you make the reed vibrate. And then the sound goes into the tubing, and then you change the pitch by pressing combinations of keys down to make the pitch change, because the air column goes through at different speeds to get the different pitches. With a brass instrument, you make the note by making that fart sound. I like making fart sounds, which is why I like playing flugelhorns and trumpets and things. So that's the sound you make. And then you press down on the valves, and the valves basically force the air to go through these different tubes, and that's how the pitches are made. So it's a combination of changing the pressure on your lips and the tightness of your lips. So you go from, a sloppy fart sound to one, and then it's a combination of the valves that make the pitches. So whereas on a saxophone, you do need to make some changes to your embouchure to make certain notes, but it's just the keys. You press down the keys, they change the pitch. There, any excuse to get the flugelhorn out. But yes, layering up sounds is kind of key if you want to get like a good horn section sound. So yes, the new version of Studio One has like 3 kind of improvements. The release notes are available from the help menu in Studio One. I'll go back over there. You click on help and then go view release notes. When you click on this, it opens up a PDF document, which is where all the release notes are, and they have been updated. So you can hit that once you've updated to 6.5.1. All right. And yes, it's mostly bug fixes as well. There's quite a few of those. And Brett was saying something about the bass, which I missed. You want to make sure your bass emphasizes the one. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Depends on the style of music. I'm a bass player. I've been playing bass since I was about 12 years old. I'm 48 now. So I've been playing for a lot of years, playing bass. And yeah, some styles of music, you do want to emphasize the one. In funk music in particular, you want to make sure that there's a good, strong downbeat on beat 1. However, if you're playing reggae music, you want to avoid beat 1. Okay? Or play beat 1 as a weak beat, because in reggae music, depending on whether it's 1-drop or 2-drop reggae, beat 1 is always weak, and beat 3 is emphasized a bit more. So 1. So you basically go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the upbeats are all strong as well. So 1, 2, da, 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 and 3, and 1, and 3, and 1, and 3. So that's how you would count reggae music. It's the beat 3 that's strong beat, and the upbeats are the strong beats. But beat 1 is either avoided altogether, or it's very, 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 very weak when you're playing bass. So if I'm playing bass in a reggae band, I'm largely avoiding the 1. Instead of going dun dun dun, I'd go dun 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 dun, something like that. So I'm avoiding beat 1, and it's a stylistic thing for that style of music. Let's see, what else do we have? Brett's saying, so those sounds aren't part of the PSO. What I used there was a mixture of sounds that are just standard in Presence, and also the section sounds from the orchestra, the brass section sounds of the Persona Symphonic Orchestra, which is an add-on. If you are a member of Studio One Plus, then yes, you will get the Persona Symphonic Orchestra. You can just download it. It's an add-on for Presence XT, so it doesn't show up in instruments once you've installed it. They all get added into Presence XT, okay? Yes, Brett, I'm aware of the style of my examples. Thank you. But I appreciate your comments. Thank you. All right, let's see what else we got. Oh, yes, there's the Studio One meetup at 8 p.m. Central, which is going to be 1 a.m. UK. So this show finishes in about 7 minutes' time, and then we'll have about an hour's break before the Studio One meetup. So if you want to go to that, then you can jump over to there in about an hour. Rich says, you're better off getting an all-in-one library that covers the main instruments you need and the articulations that are common. That's a great, great, great comment. That's superb. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Let's see, what else do we have? Do I have any more questions? Stephen Wilson says, wow, that sounds awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, that song, Softly Spoken, is ages old. That's probably, when did I do that? I think that might have been 2017, I think, maybe. So yeah, it's pretty old, and it was done in a much older version of Studio One, which is why the mix is a little bit messed up. Because we've changed quite a bit since then. Let's see. Tony says that way when you don't feel like going to church, you can stay home and mix while watching the Cowboys play. If I was really, really seriously into American football, yes, I like it. I watched some the other night. I forget who was playing now, but there was a game on the other night, and I watched. I watched the third and fourth quarters, so I basically watched the second half of the game, and it's pretty good. But yes, I have, in fact, whilst we were testing Metro, I did actually sit here and I mixed a couple of Sunday services with a friend of mine who was actually in the who was actually behind the desk at church. And we hooked up a webcam so we could see each other, and I could see what was happening on the desk at his end, so that basically it was just a visual aid to help me test. And then I could like talk to him and say, hey, sounds good at my end, how does that sound good for you? And so on. So, and it worked out pretty good. Boris says, I'd like to touch on the new DAW project and its possibilities. Yes, the DAW project's file extension. At the moment, it only works with Studio One and the latest version of Bitwig Studio 5. That's the only caveat. And it's not fully fledged yet, I would say. There is a lot to it already, but I'm pretty sure that, there's going to be more functionality, more things that are supported that you will be able to export to a supporting DAW in the future. So at the moment, it's just Bitwig Studio, because basically the whole thing is a collaborative effort between Presonus and Bitwig. The guys at Bitwig have been fantastic, and they've been a delight to work with. But there are, I cannot say which manufacturers, but there are other interested manufacturers of DAWs who are looking to get this built into their DAWs, because they see the value of what it supports. Because already, just out of the gate, with this very first iteration of the DAW project file format, already it supports more than AAF does. Already. And AAF is pretty much industry standard for sharing files around, sharing sessions around between different DAWs. But it already does more than AAF does. There's a really good knowledge base article that details out everything to do with DAW project. And I'm going to go find that article for you now. And I'm going to put it in the chat once I've got it. Here we go. So if you're into the potential for DAW project, check out this knowledge base article, which is on the Presonus knowledge base, and I'm gonna let you guys see it just now. So this is what is available just now. It's brand new. So there's some things that are, that are all ready to go, and then more stuff will get added in the future. DAW project file format includes all time related information, all tracks/channel information, audio, note, automation data, and the states of plugins used. In that, the format is far superior to other exchange formats such as OMF, AAF, or standard MIDI file. Following types of data are currently supported in a DAW project file: audio tracks, instrument tracks, folders, automation, mixer channels, channel inserts, and send effects. VST2, VST3 plugin, and AU will be coming in the future. And markers. Note here, Exchange limited content that is supported by both Studio One and Bitwig Studio. Additional data such as lyrics, chords, or video will be added in the future. Here is a complete list of features. For reference, we've included a comparison with MIDI and AAF. The latter formats have different functions and intentions. The table is meant as a help to understand where DAW project fits in. It covers a wide range of data relevant to DAWs and DAW-like applications. All right, so basically the one that you want to focus on is this column and this third column, okay? So DAW projects, these are all the things that are currently supported and will be transmitted between Studio One and Bitwig and any other DAW that comes on board. So beats and seconds can be combined in DAW project, but in AAF you only get seconds. Audio clips, events and audio clips, fades, crossfades, amplitude, pan, time warping, and transpose. And look at what you only get with AAF. Audio clips and events, fades, crossfades, amplitude, and pan. You don't get transposing. And you don't get time warping. Notes and note expressions. AAF, not supported at all. You don't get to send note data. Automation, tempo, time signature, MIDI messages, volume, pan, mute, sends, plugin parameters, built-in device parameters. But look, you only get 3 items for AAF. You get volume, pan, and video-related parameters. So video's not supported in DAW project yet. Plugins. Stores full plugin state and automation of parameters. VST2, VST3, AU, and clap. None of that is supported in AAF. Built-in devices, generic EQ, and compressor and limiters. None of that's supported. Clip launcher, clips and scenes, but clip launcher is not supported in AF. So I recommend that you go and check out this article. It gives you a whole bunch of very useful information about currently where this all works and how it already works. Only one person is like this. Well, let's help them out, shall we? Oh, it wants me to sign in. That's fine. I'll do that. Let's go all the way down to the bottom again. And let's give that a thumbs up. There we go. All right. Rich says, just a quick update on the Halloween winner, Sean Aaron. His prize is on the way, and the next up will be the Christmas challenge. Crimbo. Yep, absolutely. I'm really looking forward to the Christmas challenge. It's going to be very, very cool. Rich and I will have more details on that coming very soon. We promise. Boris says, we just need the other top 2 DAWs. Yeah, Pro Tools and Cubase and others, that would be great. I hope they get on board soon, because I personally think that this is going to be a fantastic new file format for sharing between DAWs. And there may even be some notation programs that may support this in the future. Who knows? And that would just kind of expand the whole thing. up even more. Mike Rell is here. Hello, Mike. How you doing? Good to see you, buddy. And we've got Keith Salisbury here as well. And we've also got Tick Moranon. Is Studio One compatible with Mac Sonoma? Yes, it is. Studio One 6.5. The knowledge base article on that very subject just got released today, in actual fact. So that is a good question. So if you want to check out what is and is not supported for Sonoma, the article is now in the chat as well. But so far, here it is. System supported M1, M2 native, M1, M2 with Rosetta 2, and Intel x64 native. Universal Control 4.2, released on October 17th, 2023, supports Mac OS Sonoma. Universal Control 4.2 support for Studio Live Series 3, and then all of these other devices, including audio boxes, the Studio Series, so the Studio 192, Studio 192 Mobile, 1824C, IO Station Quantums, Fader Port Series, the 2018 single fader, the Fader Port 8, Fader Port 16, and the Atoms, Revelator mics, supported software, Studio One 6.5, Notion Desktop 6.8.2 in Rosetta mode only, Presonus Hub 1.6.0, Studio One Plus, all included software, add-ons, and bundle content, Universal Control 4.2.0. Please note, after firmware update, the switch, and all of that. Check your third-party plugin developers' websites for updates, as many of them may not install or run correctly under macOS. That should say 14, not 12. Some Studio Magic plugins may not run under macOS 13 or 14, so you want to check with those if you have those. You want to check with those manufacturers. And there is a little list of stuff that is not supported. Firewire products on M1 Macs. Firewire installer will not allow any 1394 products. That includes Studio Live Classic or Studio Live AI series and so on. So check this all out. And iOS 17, there's some details for that there as well. And there you can see Studio One Remote 1.8 and Notion Mobile 3.2.3, which was released just before October. All right, so there you go. We are pretty much all done and dusted for this episode of Songwriting Simplified. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. I really appreciate you all. You guys are fantastic. And thank you so much in particular, actually, for your involvement with the Halloween challenge. It was so good hearing all of the entries that we got. And I was really surprised by the number of entries that we got. But I was also very pleased with the standard of all of the entries. The standard was really good. And particularly as, you know, the challenge that we set was a little unusual, to say the least, because we set you the challenge of using a particular scale that is not going to be very familiar with any of you. And you rose to that challenge. And you did really good. So well done, everybody that took part. And I really mean that. Well done, because you did great, all of you. And, you know, a big shout out again to Sean Aaron, who won. His song was just, it was just outstanding. It was really, really outstanding. It was fantastic. And Ron and Bob Berda did a great job as well with their, we basically gave them runner-up status. Those were the top 3 most outstanding entries of all of the entries that we had. So I'm really looking forward to the Christmas one. And as I said, Rich and I will have details on exactly how that's all going to work very shortly. So I will see you all on Sunday for Sunday Night Live. Hopefully we'll have a bit more information for you on that then. But otherwise, I will see you then. Have a great rest of your week. I'm going to play you out with a little bit more from Softly Spoken, this time with all of the instrumentation in the song. And I will see you over at the after show party hosted by Billy Morgan. And I hope as many of you as is possible can come along to the Studio One meetup as well. All right, folks, I'll see you on Sunday. Good night.